I'm Julia Lane, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Data and Computing. And I am delighted to welcome you this morning to our first event in the Data and Technology Outlook series. This is an exciting new fireside chat speaker series that we are launching here at the University of Chicago. And it's really focusing on critical conversations between business leaders and academic experts, looking at some of the really fundamental trends that we think are going to be reshaping our future going forward. I want to just briefly mention the center, a little bit about our center. So the Center for Data and Computing was launched in 2018 as a major initiative that's part of the University of Chicago's overall expansion of computer science and data science. And the focus of our center is really about launching next generation data science research and artificial intelligence. One thing that we really think about carefully at our center is launching frontier research. And this is, exciting research initiatives that include topics that are critical to our understanding of data science and AI, including data-driven broadband access, understanding materials discovery using AI, the development of AI plus science, which includes catalyzing scientific discovery using AI. And these types of groundbreaking research are really fueled by partnerships that we have in place with external stakeholders such as industry, civic organizations, and government. And this is critical to our mission as a center. So I want to, kick off our first talk today, which is going to focus on a really exciting topic, which is the future of AI and data-driven applications. And we're going to have about an hour today, and we'll start with a fireside chat. We'll also have an opportunity to take questions from the audience. So if you are joining us on Zoom webinar, you can submit your questions via the chat. If you're joining from the live stream on YouTube, feel free to also submit your questions via the chat application there. And we'll get to that in the second half of our discussion. So it is my great pleasure to welcome our two speakers to the virtual stage. I will start with Michael J. Franklin, who is the inaugural Liew family chairman of the Computer Science Department at the University of Chicago. He is an authority on data analytics, data management, and distributed systems. He also serves as senior advisor to the provost on computation and data science and is playing a leadership role in the university's data science initiative. Previously, Mike spent 17 years as faculty at the University of California, Berkeley, where he was the Thomas M. Siebel Professor of Computer Science and chair of the Computer Science Division. At Berkeley, he co-founded the Algorithms, Machines, and People Laboratory, AMP Lab, which created Apache Spark, an industry-changing open source big data platform. Additionally, I'm pleased to welcome James Phillips, who is the president of Business Applications Group at Microsoft. As president of this group, James leads a global team of over 7,000 product developers who build and operate Microsoft's business applications and services. His product portfolio includes the Dynamics 365's family, the Power Platform, Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, and Microsoft's AI and mixed reality business applications. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our distinguished panelists and let them start the fireside chat.
Great. All right. Well, thanks very much, Julia, and welcome to everybody. James, thank you very much for joining us, for coming back to your alma mater, albeit virtually.
Great to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So good. So why don't we get started? So Julia gave a quick overview of what you do at Microsoft, but I was wondering if you could give us a little bit more of a deep dive on your role as president of business applications and sort of what does the business application technology landscape look look like at Microsoft, and how does it fit in with the rest of things that go on at Microsoft?
Yeah, so that's the good news is it does fit in, and I'll and I say that not flippantly. There was a time, if I'm being super transparent, at Microsoft where our business applications product line was kind of a little bit on the side. And one of the things that we've done over the last, call it 4 or so years, is to really sort of integrate our business application product line with the rest of Microsoft's cloud enterprise and AI portfolio. Today, you can sort of think of the Microsoft cloud as a stack of sorts. At the very bottom, there's the infrastructure layer. So we have data centers all over planet Earth, exabyte class storage, compute that's almost limitless practically. On top of that, we have a data and application platform layer that allows you to use all that infrastructure to build apps and get value from data. On top of that, we have a citizen application and data layer that allows anyone, not just professional developers or data scientists, but those who are, business leaders, operators to leverage technology. And then on top of that, we have our business applications and our productivity applications, Office 365 and Dynamics 365. And these are all integrated. I mean, Dynamics is built on Power, is built on Azure, is running in these data centers, and this ability to start with a business application to solve a real problem. I want to understand who's coming into my retail environment and what they're purchasing from me, or I want to track the calls that are happening between my customer service representatives and my customers. You can start with an application, but those applications are extensible, customizable, tailorable, leveraging all of these tools beneath. And importantly, the data from all of these applications lives down in this cloud with the platform above it that allows you to go get even more value. So it's an integral part of what we're doing. And it's been a lot of fun because there's just a huge amount of change happening right now in sort of the nature of business applications.
Yeah. Does that common stack cause issues in terms of integration and things happening in one part of the stack having unintended consequences in other parts of the stack, or how does that play out?
So it's always a challenge, right? I think that, but part of what we've done over the course of the last decade, as we've really rolled out this Microsoft cloud and all the technologies, is get good at working together, understanding that, so what we try to do is to only leverage or integrate with sort of public exposed APIs, So if I'm at the business application layer looking downward, I want to leverage the things that we advertise as sort of reliable, persistent interfaces, so that I know that I've got stability beneath me. And if we're going to make a breaking change to an interface, frequently what we'll do is create a new one. And then over time, deprecate the old one to give people the opportunity to move over. And so we're very measured in the changes that we make. Yep. We have a very robust, safe deployment process. So when we roll out changes, we do that in expanding rings of exposure, so we can detect very early in the process if we're breaking anyone, and then we have the ability to quickly roll back. So we both try to systematically avoid breaking changes, and then where we have unintended breaking changes, we try to predict it very, very early and roll it back.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense because, the power of being able to leverage that shared infrastructure, like you said, from the global, data center and Azure, cloud infrastructure up through shared data and all that is incredibly powerful. But I'm sure, there are challenges that come along with that. So that makes sense. Well, cool. So, so thanks for that background. I guess where we wanted to go was sort of the main topic of this this conversation was about AI and business, AI and data and business applications, and sort of the way I was thinking about posing it. the first question about this was that, about 10 years ago, Mark Andreessen famously wrote this blog post that said that software was eating the world. And it's pretty clear 10 years later that, AI and data are look like they're poised to eat software. And so I'd be curious to hear your perspective on, how AI and data are impacting business applications. Really in two ways. This is kind of a complicated question, but from your customer's perspective, of course, which is really important, and then also sort of from your perspective, from so how do things get developed in the future? So if you could maybe start with how it looks to customers and what happens there.
Okay, so business applications, I like to say, really haven't changed at all for decades and decades and decades. And so I'm an old guy, and I've been able to watch the industry for decades. And think about, I'll use just an example, but it's generalizable. Think about customer service. So customer service, you've got customers out in the wild, they're using your products and services, they have a problem, they need some support, they call a customer service organization, regardless of what the product category is, and you help them and try to, fix the problem. If you go back to 1970 and you look at a customer support, I've got a picture I use actually of TWA Airlines, their customer call center. And you got a bunch of folks sitting in front of green screens, taking calls and supporting customers. If you look at the application, the business application that was supporting that customer service representative, and then you go look at the same class of application in 1980, 1990, 2000, the only difference you will see, I would argue, is the delivery mechanism. It's not a green screen, it's a fat client, and then it's a browser-based thing, but it's same class of application, for all practical purposes, record keeping and reporting systems where, customers calling in, I take notes, we work the case through. So that's sort of what business applications have always been, really glorified record keeping and reporting systems with a little bit of process automation thrown in, perhaps. That is now fundamentally changing, and really for the first time. And the change is largely due to the fact that data is coming out of everything, and it's coming first. And what I mean by that is data is not being created because someone opened an application and typed it into a form and stored it off in a database. Literally, the thing I'm selling to a customer now is talking back to me. Mm-hmm. When I walk out of this door, literally behind me, there's a thermostat in the hall that will tell the organization that I bought this from that I'm home. They know what my temperature preferences are when I drive my car into the office. Tesla knows the route I took, the songs I listened to, how hard I braked. Everything is increasingly providing data. Mm-hmm. Now, that allows organizations to completely reimagine what it means to serve customers. Now, I don't need to wait for someone to have a problem. I can collect telemetry, run an anomaly detection model, predict when someone is going to have a problem, perhaps even before they have a problem, proactively reach out and get in front of it before it becomes a problem, and solve the problem before they knew they had it. I mean, that is as different as it could be. Mm-hmm. And so this change is, I would argue, at the very core. You can unpack it, right? It's sort of Moore's law and miniaturization meets embedded software meets connectivity, which permits data explosion, which leads to everything else. And business applications are being impacted by that chain of events.
Cool. And, you mentioned that until recently things haven't changed much, but I'm also wondering if your customer expectations sort of have changed faster than that, because we all interact with these data-driven applications and AI-driven applications, online all the time through, as consumers. And so I'm wondering if you're seeing your customers having more stringent requirements or higher expectations in terms of the responsiveness, that they're getting from their systems, and these ideas about prediction that you were talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, so I'll give you an example. So one of our customers is TrueGreen. True Green is in the United States. They do lawn care, and they're the leader in lawn care in the United States. And so, one of the things that they struggled with, frankly, is they've got a workforce that turns over pretty frequently. If you think about their lawn care specialists that are out actually doing the work of providing lawn care to their customers, the length of time required to really train them to understand and diagnose issues, et cetera, is quite a while. And then the turnover rate's pretty high. And so they struggle, frankly, with serving their customers. And so they built an application leveraging Dynamics 365 in our Power Platform to allow these professionals who are out, in my backyard here out the window, to have an application that allows them to take a picture of a plant or something on the grass that then uses a model to diagnose and predict precisely what the remediation needs to be. And so I think both consumers at the far end and then our customers who are typically enterprises serving those consumers, the pressure's flowing upstream to us to meet effectively consumer expectations that are flowing upstream.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. On the flip side of that, there's a lot of concern in consumer tech, about the fact that your car knows all the things that you said your car knows about you, and your thermostat knows what it knows, and for all you know, they're talking to each other. I guess the question is, in the business application space, do those same types of concerns about having all this data exist, or is there somehow more freedom and maybe less risk because of the nature of the applications?
So I don't think there's a big difference, frankly, between the concerns of consumers and those our enterprise customers who are leveraging AI and being entrusted with the data of their customers who are frequently consumers. I think we're all, frankly, struggling with the implications of having all of this information and being able to apply advanced analytical techniques, machine learning, and artificial intelligence on the back of all of this data. I think it's one of the things, just to be parochial for a moment, that I really love about being part of Microsoft is our just absolute commitment, deep commitment to trust. And we've got a set of ethical principles that we're very public about. We've driven legislation. Brad Smith is a very vocal public voice from Microsoft in trying to drive these principles throughout our organization and throughout the industry and into government, government regulatory institutions. So it's very important for us. If you were to go search on the web for Microsoft Responsible AI, we've just got very, very deep commitment to ensuring the trustworthiness, the reliability, the transparency, the testability, openness of what we're doing for our customers. And we're doing it because we believe deeply in it, and also because our customers believe in it, and they demand it. So it's not just a consumer question; it's a question for all of us.
Yeah. No, great, good. All right. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Obviously, one thing that's having a huge impact on everybody's work has been the pandemic, and we've all learned that things like what we're doing right now are the ability to meet remotely and work remotely and all is in many ways maybe even more effective than people thought it was going to be. And so, clearly we're going to be moving into scenarios where hybrid, in-person and online work is going to be the norm. But I'm curious if, from your perspective, if you have thoughts about, maybe deeper implications for some of your customers in terms of, how they function, how they interact with their customers. how their employees work, and maybe even the products and services that they offer. I mean, do you think it's business as usual, but now some of it is remote, or do you think there's something deeper than that?
So, a lot of folks talk about this pandemic as being the great accelerator in some ways of a bunch of trends that were already in flight, and we've seen that, right? I think, I'll just talk about perhaps three things. So, number one, we've long said businesses have to be agile, right? I mean, markets are changing faster than they ever have. Competitors are emerging more quickly than they ever have. Things are just changing quickly. Mm-hmm. And this need as a business to be able to turn quickly, to both listen, understand, predict, and then change in order to thrive and survive in this dynamic world that we live in is mandatory. And, I don't think any of us woke up on New Year's 2020 thinking that the change that we were going to have to face was going to be as dramatic as it has been for us. But it's, we've been saying change happens. And so one of the things that's happened over the last year, certainly in our business and across our customers, has been the incredibly rapid adoption of low-code, no-code platforms that allow you to very quickly build applications, analyze data, automate processes in order, and to do it integrating with the systems that you already have in order to turn on a dime. I mean, we literally in a 48-hour period created an application in partnership with a major hospital system in the United States to address the tracking of critical care equipment, available beds and ICUs, and to roll that out to hospital systems across the world, and did that in a matter of days, literally. Yeah. And just the ability to create these applications, host them in the cloud, get them out into the hands of users across the entire planet. I mean, that's a great case study in how these platforms and these systems can allow you to respond. And so that's one. Yep. The other has been, and maybe I'll just leave it at this, engaging with customers digitally, being able to engage customers without having to, have physical presence has been a trend for a very long time. And, nothing puts the accelerator to the floor on that particular trend than saying you can't have physical contact with your customers, and just sort of forcing everyone to accelerate what was already happening has, I think, really probably been the biggest impact for our business, and then certainly for our customers, just the acceleration of trends that were already in flight. Working from home and having a flexible working arrangement would be the third, and you've called that out. And I do think that we're going to see not a return to the way it was, but perhaps a fast forward to the way that it probably was going to be anyway. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of this is about acceleration, I think. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, now I'm going to ask you for some free consulting based on that question, or your answer to it. So, if we look at low code, no code, I mean, the story you told about rolling out a global app in a matter of, days is amazing. And as an educator and somebody who educates computer science students, I'm wondering, what advice do you have for us in terms of how we need to be getting our students to think about this new world?
So I think thinking about the new world is the first thing. I think but in all seriousness, I think it is an important topic. And I do think that as we think about the application of technology to business, Satya Nadella talks a lot about tech intensity and sort of what an organization needs in order to be in a position to innovate and to thrive and to better serve customers and to empower employees and to optimize the operational processes of the organization. It's a framework for thinking about what you need in order to be postured to live in this dynamic world. And one of the key elements of his thesis is that low code, no code is a requirement, because we just can never, ever mint enough professional developers and data scientists to meet all of the needs of organizations across the planet. I mean, and this is not new news. If you go talk to any CIO at any organization, one of the things that you will consistently hear is we've got thousands of applications in our backlog that we wish we had, that we would love to have built, but we just don't have the capacity to build it all. Mm-hmm. And what low code, no code provides is the ability for, basically to activate a much, much broader swath of the organization to go, eat away at these backlogs. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, in some ways, low code, no code has always been a thing in our industry. In fact, when I was, a kid, we used, DBase 2, DBase 3, Fox Pro. These were platforms that allowed, I wasn't a computer scientist at that point in my life, but I was able to put systems together because I could, express things more simply. And here's the problem, though. Historically, those types of systems have created a lot of problems in organizations. What would happen, for example, someone would, stand up a server underneath their desk. They would have built a Fox Pro application to solve some critical need they have. Mm-hmm. It became part of the business, process landscape in the organization. They leave. Suddenly, someone kicks out the power cord on that SharePoint server or the Fox Pro server under their desk, and no one knows why they can't close their books. I mean, it's a real problem. Yep. And so there's always been this sort of balance between, hey, how do we empower the organization to go get things done versus how do we govern and control and reduce risk? Yep. And what's happened as a result of the emergence of the cloud is that you get the best of both worlds. If you look at something like Power BI and Power Apps in our low-code, no-code platform, it's not unique to us. It's anyone that has a cloud low-code platform. You get the best of both worlds. It's provided out of a centrally managed cloud service. It's not running on a server under someone's desk. And so IT, or the governing body in an organization, can see what apps have been built, what are their dependencies, what data is being used, how many people are using it. But still the tools and the access allows for that rapid innovation and app creation. So you sort of, I like to say, you're long leashing the organization. You're not unleashing them. They can't run off and create havoc, but you're providing enough room to get the benefits of both sides of that equation.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. I mean, it's really because of the confluence of a lot of trends that this is happening. And so we've talked about some of them. We've talked about data and AI. We've talked about low code, no code. We've talked about just remote work and collaboration and communication software. So there's a couple others I want to ask you about while we're on that track. So one I know is one that you're passionate about, which is mixed reality. And I'm wondering if you could maybe explain a little bit what when you interpret mixed reality, what you mean by that, and then sort of how you're thinking about it going forward for business applications.
So I'll do this by describing a conversation I had with a customer, because I'll be honest with you, the times I've gotten most excited about technologies is when I have a customer come in and talk to me and they're excited about the potential for their business. And so this is what got me really sort of pumped up about mixed reality. So I was talking to a customer, they build airplanes. And what the customer said to me was this: we've got people out there building wings. They are laying carbon fiber strips down, putting epoxy and doing these layups. And it's a very sort of expert task. And today they're using mixed reality. In fact, they're using one of my products to train those individuals on how to do it. And so you put a Hololens on, mm-hmm. you run what's called a guide, and it sort of projects in front of you. Okay, lay the strip down here, put the epoxy here, lay it down here, and it really guides them through the process of how you do this work. And that's interesting, and it's useful, and they're getting a lot of value from it. But their vision is this: why on earth would that worker not be wearing that same device as they're actually doing the job? Because if you think about a HoloLens device, it is both, it's sort of one part output device. It can project holograms into the field of view of the user, but it's also an input device. There are depth cameras, audio sensors, and so it's both sensing and projecting.
Mm-hmm.
And so their expectation is, man, what I'd love to see happen is when that worker is going to pick up that can of epoxy, boom, it sees the QR code, scans it, brings it to the cloud, combines it with the inventory information, knows that thing is expired, comes back down in the real world, puts a big X right in front of that, tells the worker they need to go replace it. And so this ability to both sense reality, merge that with other sources of data, draw conclusions, predict, and then come back down and augment the reality for a frontline worker, whether they're in a warehouse, on a factory line, in a mine, out in the field agriculturally. I mean, this to me is a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
When you're effectively giving human beings superpowers as a result of being with them and alongside them, with this sensor suite and this ability to sort of mix data. That to me is the future of business applications, particularly in the operational domain, where people are building products and services or delivering services.
Yep.
As you can tell, I'm pretty excited about this. I think this is this is the next big opportunity for certainly for business applications in the operational domain.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. And so, I see it in the physical world. That makes sense. And I want to talk a little bit about that in a second. But looking at sort of the data analytics part of your portfolio, I mean, is there an opportunity there for, what was it? I was trying to think of this Tom Cruise movie where he's moving. I mean, is this, do you see that do you think your BI users in the future are going to be, doing 3D dives into data cubes and things like that? Or how do you see that? Minority Report. Thanks.
Yeah. So I think so. We're already doing that, to be clear. I do think, though, Mike, that a lot of the so Power BI today runs on Hololens. We were able to leverage Power BI in that context, but today it's being used less about sort of how do I dive into a cube and take a something conceptual like that and try and make it physical, and it really is more. For example, we just opened a new development center, building, a beautiful campus in Herzliya in Israel. And in that new facility, the real estate and facilities organization actually walks around with HoloLens, leveraging Power BI, where all the systems you can walk into an elevator bank hall and you can see the status of every elevator. It's all sort of Power BI projections next to the physical assets that allow them to diagnose, understand, troubleshoot, and repair. And so it's less about, the Minority Report kind of thing and more about how do you get the data where you need it, when you need it, where you need it, right time, right place.
Great.
But certainly the Minority Report thing can capture the imagination.
Sure. So, okay, so good. So going back to the physical world, I guess I would just like to kind of I'd like to even go one further,
Sure.
Based on some of the work that we have going on at the University of Chicago in our human-computer interaction group. And what they look at is actually, physical devices that are sort of the next step, the next step of the edge of the network. So beyond even just projecting, say some information onto something in the physical world, they'll actually build devices that interact with you based on what you're trying to do, or based on data that's sensing the situation. And so, tools that teach you how to use them or prevent you from using them the wrong way in a certain situation. So I guess you can respond to that or not, but it is something we should talk about. I'd love to put some of our people in touch with some of your people.
Absolutely. No, I'd love to do that. And I think, one of the things that we've really enjoyed, it's funny, Brad Smith, who by the way, is one of our deepest thinkers and one of the most eloquent people I've ever met. And so I'm going to paraphrase and probably destroy his thought, but he said, at one point that, this industry, the technology industry, was not born in a garage, like a lot of folks, want to say, but that it was born in a university. And, our relationship with universities and the depth of that relationship. I mean, we've published at Microsoft, we've got hundreds of researchers and have published over 22,000 papers over the last decade. And much of that has been done hand in hand with our university colleagues and friends. And so any opportunity that we have to work together to move the state of the art forward, we're eager to do that. So I would welcome that.
Great. Good. Okay, I actually had a question about that later on, but maybe I'll keep it till a little later. Okay. So we talked about mixed reality, computer vision. What about that in terms of how you see that changing things in your world?
So I think I've come to believe, frankly, that the whole computer vision opportunity in my domain, right, in business applications, is one and the same as the mixed reality application. And in some ways, we talk about at Microsoft reality as a service, or a perception platform, or a reality platform. And if you think about, let's say that you've got a mining operation happening that's in the open, and you've got cameras that are able to look over the mine site and to understand when there may be safety issues, when a piece of equipment is moving into the proximity of a human and there's danger. This ability to look over a site, to marry that with, I'm wearing a Hololens at the same time, and now I'm going to get the alert. It's going to point me to that direction or tell me something I need to do, or to communicate to me, through audio means. It's going to direct my attention based on things that I can't see behind me, perhaps, maybe even gives me sort of 360-degree vision when I've got an obscured, view path. And so to me, this ability to sense reality, whether it is through the device I'm wearing or through other devices that are, in proximity, yep. And then to synthesize all of that into a complete picture that's married with and merged with additional data sources that can then be used either to automate some response, yep. Or to provide a human with information. All of this to me is one and the same. And we introduced a product. And it's not an advertisement for Microsoft, but we introduced a product called Dynamics 365 Connected Store, which allows our retail customers to leverage the cameras that many of them already have, in place in their environment to understand things like customer traffic flows. It's sort of, in some ways, it's bringing the digital world to the physical world, right? So if I have an e-commerce site, I've got all kinds of information about how customers come in, where they go, what they browse, what they don't browse, what they buy, what they don't buy. But I don't get that in a physical environment unless I've got human beings standing out there watching and taking notes. Yep. Yep. But if you can use AI and this computer vision capability to observe, observe the flow of traffic, know where people are, know when stocks don't have inventory or shelves don't have inventory. This allows one to really reimagine what's possible. And so I think it's one big sort of next step for business applications, moving beyond just the digital data that we all have access to data about the real world that traditionally or historically really only humans could process. Yep. That's where we're heading.
Yeah, great. Good. So I guess just one last thing on this. So we've talked about a lot of emerging technologies that are really coming together in a very deep way, and you brought that out very clearly to make fundamental changes. I guess this is the opposite question, which is, are there things that you see, hyped in the trade press or whatever that you think, maybe aren't going to be so impactful, or things that you think, you've been doing this for decades, things that are just fundamental and aren't going to change, no matter what technology is there?
So the thing that comes to mind for me immediately is blockchain. So, we've been hearing about blockchain for years and years. It's, every year is the year that blockchain is going to change everything. Mm-hmm. And yet in sort of enterprise business context, we really haven't seen huge fundamental shifts yet in business process. And your question is interestingly posed, right? It's sort of, are there some fundamental forces that are preventing things from happening? And so here's my take. Blockchain in many ways is about trust. It's about being able to create trust. And often the probably the most valuable need for trust is cross-organizational. Can I trust my supply chain? Can as a consumer, can I trust, and so these cross-organizational requirements are often the undoing of a lot of technologies. It's, just as an insider at a large enterprise like Microsoft, any large organization, if you want to go make change in that organization, if you want to do something disruptive, if you own complete control over that decision, you're running the organization and can make the call, that is an order of magnitude easier than if you have to go convince some other organization to make that change. And that's inside the same company.
Yeah.
Imagine now when you're trying to shift industries, where you've got competitors and suppliers, and you're all trying to get on the same page. Oh, we're going to use this new thing. And I mean, it's a really, really, really difficult change problem that just gets exponentially more complex as the number of control points, emerge in the system, if you will.
Yeah.
And so that to me is the biggest. I think blockchain is an enormously promising technology. I think there are huge opportunities for us to change the game.
Yeah.
Frequently with this kind of situation, you get one of Porter's external forces coming in, it's regulation, government that often comes in over the top.
Yep.
And sort of provides the spark or the requirement that technology or some system is adopted which breaks through all the coordination complexity. So I'm still hopeful, but that's the one where I think people don't necessarily recognize that the problem is not the technology. The problem is change in the system that the technology will live in.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that is exactly the kind of thing I was trying to get at, like this idea of trust being sort of just a fundamental concept that no matter how good your technology is, your business isn't going to work if that isn't
right
there. Great. All right. Well, great. So really enjoyed that conversation. Just wanted to take some time to take some questions from the audience if we still have time to do that. We had some that were pre-submitted, and I think some that have come in since. Okay. Interesting. All right. I might get to that one. There's one okay. Why don't we just do this one first? So one of the first questions we got was that AI has been around for a long time, but it's been sort of traditionally the domain of here it says white coat lab scientists, but sort of the priesthood. How do you see AI being, even more trusted and more broadly driven by business users? So sort of, how do you see the democratization, I guess, of AI and what the impacts of that might be?
It's an interesting one. So I worked with an individual back in the early 90s, actually. And this individual, his name was John Spencer, great guy. But he had the scars of this AI company that he had tried to build in the 80s, actually. And, so we've been chasing this for a very long time. AI's there, it's the thing, it's going to change everything. I'll say two things. I'd say thing number one, AI, ML, feeds on data. If you don't have data, you can't train models. And I would argue that it's only been in the last decade or so that we've had the explosion of data required to truly begin to build effective models. if you look at this sort of, I think it all comes back to that initial chain of events, software in everything, because processors are miniaturized and that they're all connected, and that just data's out of everything now. Now you've got enough to go train. So I think that, we've kind of moved out of what was an attempt at AI to having enough data to take different approaches to create models that actually are very effective. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can recall, wasn't too long ago when we were paying $1 million prizes to people who could drive around a parking lot, a car. Right. And now I literally commute into the office without touching my steering wheel. I mean, and that's happened in a very short period of time, but it's happened because of data and the ability to go train and to have the processing power to train it. So I think we're just to the point now where we can build reliable, effective models because the data's there now. And then from an adoption perspective, I'd say that's easy. As soon as you show a business person an opportunity to get better outcomes, they're going to be all in. And so I think we're getting to the point now where the models work. We're seeing the effectiveness of the impact on critical business processes, and I think that's why we're seeing the flood of adoption.
Yep. Do you think there's a trade-off between sort of the power of these tools and the fact that as they are democratized, the people using them may not have the same level of training, in statistical inference and things like that, that they would have had those tools been harder to get to? I mean, do you think there's an issue there?
Look, I think that ultimately the goal, and if you go back to our sort of responsible AI position, I think it's critically important that two things happen. Thing number one, that we do in fact try to democratize, right? I mean, there's value here for consumers and for our customers who serve consumers. And so anything that we can do to unlock that value responsibly, I think is a good thing. And I do think that it's important that we've got, one of the things that we've driven, frankly, and from a regulatory perspective here in the state of Washington, we drove legislation that mandates that when AI is included in a product or service, that there are accessible APIs that would allow one to come in and that they're documented and they're available to test the efficacy and the value and the trustworthiness of that model. And so we're trying to create this transparency where we sort of package up, if you will, the value because there's value there, but then we allow the testability, if you will, and the trust. So I think both things are important.
Great. All right. Well, so we have a question from a colleague of mine, Randy Picker, who's a professor in the law school, and so it's a law question. And he asked, could you talk about possible regulation in your space? We're seeing regulators in Europe pushing for greater interoperability and mandatory data sharing. How do you think that matters for the structure of cloud computing and for the types of cloud-enabled applications you're deploying?
Frankly, I think it makes all the difference. So this is one of my sort of the most important thing that I'm trying to push at Microsoft and across the industry is absolutely this, the openness of data. We have something called the Common Data Model at Microsoft, published on GitHub. It's totally available, open source. And what we're trying to do is this. We're trying to say, look, the shape of data matters. The semantics of data matters. If you have data that's in a well-defined shape with a well-defined meaning, that allows a lot of value to be extracted at minimal cost. So versus every single data processing problem becoming do you have the data? What shape is the data in? How do I transform one to another? And then how do I train models based on my data? It just becomes really hard versus if you say, look, we all know how to move data, and versus making the problem, how do I train a model on some random shape? And there aren't a lot of people that can do that. If you get your data in a well-known shape, then you can have people say, okay, well, for this domain of information, we've trained a bunch of models. And so you get this ecosystem that can land on top of that well-shaped, semantically available data to add value. And so we're pushing very, very hard on this and very much support regulations that mandate openness of data, that mandate that customers own their data. Very importantly, we believe deeply that when a customer entrusts us with their data, it's their data, it's not our data. And we want to ensure that we're fostering this environment of openness where value for that customer's data can be maximized, and where privacy and trust can be maintained.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so I get that from the regulatory point of view, but I will say your time as a database person is also coming out in that answer, in the sense of this idea about the semantics and the shape of data, which I think is something that hasn't gotten enough attention as prediction techniques and so on have moved more to statistical methods, and I think there will be kind of a resurgence of these sort of semantic approaches, in conjunction with statistical ones that are going to, be very useful.
I agree.
Well, that's just my cool. I guess another kind of big picture question has to do with the business intelligence, space. There's been a lot of consolidation over the past few years, with Tableau and Looker and other companies being acquired. What should we read into that consolidation? Is that a sign of maturity of the field, or what does it mean for the business intelligence in the future?
So I think there's one of the first things, by the way, Mike, that I did at Microsoft was to sort of to take over our BI business. So before I was doing the role that I have today, which, by the way, includes BI still, but was very focused on BI. And so I've been very close to it now for the last decade or so. And it's amazing how much change we've seen in that period of time. I think, let me go back to my original sort of answer when you asked about my role and how it fits in. So I'll just go back and say again, we believe the following thing, that that data at the core is what is allowing organizations to reimagine their relationships with customers, the way they operate, the way employees are empowered and interact, right? Data down there at the core. Now, in a cloud world, when you start to accrete data, I like to say data has physics, right? So let's say that you get some data, you start to reason over that data, you learn something, you make a prediction. Well, if you can get another facet, if you can bring some additional data to that analysis problem, you're going to get a clearer picture and a more accurate prediction. And so data has gravity. It tends to attract more to itself. That gravitational pull creates mass. And mass, as it starts to grow, has inertia. You don't pick up an exabyte of data and move it somewhere else lightly. The real physics starts to get engaged at that point in time. And so one of the core premises, I'd say, is that in a world of cloud computing where data is going unbounded in sort of scale, it's really, really important that you think about where you allow those physics to start to take hold. You want your data to live somewhere where you can get most value from it. You want the platform there. You want BI there. You want applications there. You want everything to be able to sort of attach to that and create value.
Right.
And so we believe very strongly that having this comprehensive stack of capabilities, ideally on a structurally and semantically consistent set of data at the core, is mandatory for our customers to have success. And so I think that's what's driven a lot of the consolidation. If you look at others who are trying, we need integration tools. We need BI. We need to go acquire productivity applications, with the acquisition of Slack. I mean, there is this attempt to go pull together the platform and pieces and applications in each of these clouds, because that's ultimately what will decide how much value is created from that core data. I think that's what's behind it. And I don't think it's just unique to BI. I think we're seeing consolidation happening across a lot of these components in furtherance of building a comprehensive cloud.
Right. But it's great. And it sounds like you're also saying, though, that if we structure things the right way and expose, the right interfaces and handle data ownership and things like that correctly, that even though the companies might be consolidating, there's a better opportunity for interaction, interoperability, and so on that would benefit customers in the long run.
That's true. I think there are two axes there. So, you're a data guy too, right? So I think ultimately there's this joinability problem, right? So if I literally have a terabyte of data sitting in one physical location, I have a terabyte of data sitting in another physical location, and maybe I have some API access versus direct access to process on top of that data, the kind of questions that I can answer are in fact different. Right? I think that's, and so there is this natural, desire to have co-location between this massive data and the processing of that data, given the realities of computer science and data processing.
Yep.
And so, yes, you're right. We believe in openness. We believe that customers own their data. We believe in consistency of semantic and structural construction of that data to facilitate value extraction. But that never, ever obviates the need to recognize that when your data is physically fragmented, you are limited.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Great. Well, listen, this has been a lot of fun. It's been I love just sort of the comprehensiveness of your vision. It's been great for everybody to hear. I would personally like to thank you for joining us, and I'd like to welcome Julia back to wrap up. But it was great. Great.
Thank you so much, Mike. Great to see you again.
Great. Thank you both. I hope everyone will join me and thanking both of our fantastic panelists. That was just such an interesting and exciting conversation. Exactly the type of conversation that we love to have at the University of Chicago. And if you enjoyed this event, I hope that, I want to briefly, quickly, rapid fire, mention a couple other programs that we have upcoming at the center. Feel free to, check out all of these various social media areas that we have that you can learn a little bit more about what's happening at the center, as well as our website. But just very quickly, if you are a undergraduate student or a high school student and you're interested in data science research and you want to get involved, we have our application for our summer lab program, which is open right now. This is an opportunity to become an RA with a real faculty member at the University of Chicago. You get to work with them in their lab. It's a great experience. There's a huge cohort of students. It's just a really fun time. Additionally, if you're interested in sort of thinking about next generation machine learning techniques and thinking about maybe upskilling, we're offering a certificate program this spring on machine learning for cybersecurity. This is a completely new program. It's just been developed. It's actually funded by a research grant, so it's very, very cutting edge. And then I also want to mention too that if you are interested in learning more about our research and are interested in partnerships, we have a industry partnership program, and we'd be happy to talk more about that. Finally, I want to mention that we have an event on Monday. If you're interested in some of the conversation today, talked a little bit about ethics of AI and data science. We have a fantastic winter speaker series that's entirely on this topic, and it involves researchers from various academic institutions as well as industry. So the full schedule is on our website, and I hope that you'll attend the next talk, which will be on Monday. And then finally, if you enjoyed the conversation and this sort of critical conversations between industry and academia, our next talk in the series is going to focus on AI and next generation food systems. And this will be this really exciting conversation between a professor at our School of Molecular Engineering, Supratik Guha, and the chief scientist at Microsoft Azure Global, Ranveer Chandra. And this happens to be another Microsoft speaker, and will actually involve folks from other organizations as well. But this is clearly a good indicator of how much we are really enjoying the sort of synergies between the two different research at these organizations. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I hope that you will join our future events as well. Thank you again.